Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's EAC webinar. This is Cassie Stumo. I am the marketing specialist at EAC. Bill Schlund, our technical account manager and technical publications expert, will be talking to us today about how 3D brings value to your content. This session is being recorded and a replay will be sent to everyone after it's over, pending any technical difficulties. Please feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go and we'll answer them after the presentation. I'll start off with a quick introduction to EAC. Our mission is to transform the way companies design, manufacture, connect to, and service their products. We are a solutions provider for PTC, offering you products such as service lifecycle management software that helps you create and manage service documentation, product data management software like Windchill and ThingWorx Navigate that helps you manage internal product data. We also implement the Internet of Things and AR into business strategies, assist with design and engineering projects, and we offer training courses and webinars for continuous learning. We're also a commercial reseller for Formlabs 3D printers, so please keep us in mind when it comes to your product development needs. We really have a variety of tools to help your organization save time and money. So today, though, we are focusing on how we can overcome difficulties in content creation with the right technical publication tools. So with that, I will pass things along to Bill.
Thanks, Cassie. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending our webinar today. I'll be going over Creo Illustrate, which is, I don't know, it's kind of a tweener product. By that I mean it takes CAD data and allows it to be repurposed for technical illustrations, for augmented reality. So there's kind of a couple different pools that it has its feet in, which is actually kind of nice because there's just one product you need to learn in order to access and be able to work and deliver content in those areas. So first of all, we'll talk how it touches a little bit in the augmented reality world. It allows us to create a series of step animations or a single animation of a particular servicing of a product or an assembly or disassembly step or anything like that. This makes it very easy for a user or a service person going out into the field to just take his cell phone or his tablet, aim it at the product in question, and then a movie is superimposed over that exact product and showing how a particular assembly step or maintenance step should be followed. So it makes it really easy for people to come up to speed with not only how things work and how they should work with them, but also it serves as a training application. Like I said, we can create a series of sequenced animations, a series of steps, or a single movie that can be played from beginning to end. Also, from delivery from the standpoint of, let's say, a hard copy, 3D illustrations can be used in a variety of different ways. Creo Illustrate, its real purpose in life is really to create, I guess what it's termed is a figure, but basically line art or shaded images, exploded views, things like that, that would be used in technical illustrations along with maybe a lot of text or tables or other things like that. So it kind of generates the graphics that would be used in, in a hard copy. And what it allows you to do is work with a variety of different CAD systems working, connecting to Windchill. It actually doesn't use the CAD file directly, but it uses a lightweight version of that, which is perfect for 3D illustrators because they don't need the big heavyweight computers that the engineers do, but they can work with the exact same content and same geometries. Now, what it also allows is that these illustrators no longer need to contact or ask engineering for any help or to create exploded views for them because they have their own tool to do that. It's very, very easy to use. So it's great for getting people up to speed and working with it. It gives them the tools that just they need in order to do their job. And again, in addition to the hard copy illustrations, we can also create 3D animations that could be put maybe on a website or in an HTML linked web page, something like that. So with that, let's move on to working with the software itself. So I have Creo Illustrate up here. I'm going to go in, and usually you'd say, with the software, you'd say File and Open, and you'd open up a file. What this does is it would open up an existing Creo Illustrate file. So Creo Illustrate makes its own files. As you can see over here, they're called a C3DI type file. But what it does is we can open up a variety of different types, or I should say import a variety of different types of files, formats in order to work with those. Once we create our explode states, our animations, all of those things, then they can be saved as this C3DI file. Again, Windchill understands this, knows how it works, keeps it up to date, all of those types of things. But since I'm starting from scratch, I don't want to open up an existing file. I import information. And there's two ways of importing your information to work with. It can be embedded, so it's sort of like a one-time snapshot, bring in the geometry. And typically what people do is they use this link. And what link does is it links to that particular file or files that you're working with. And should they ever change, when you recall up your Creo Illustrate, it'll say the geometries have changed originally from what you've used. Do you want to update those, right? So this keeps a live link between those. And this live link exists whether you're using Windchill or not. But I'm going to use, obviously, that. And I have, in this case, I'm just going on my C drive, as you can see here, but I'm just going to call up an assembly here. So I'm just calling up a .asm file. So again, like I said, I could call up a variety of different types of file formats here. If I were working in Windchill, I would be calling up like a product view or a Creo view type file, which would be a PVC file. But we'll say, and then it says, if things change, you want me just to automatically update it, or you want me to tell you about it? I definitely want to know if something has changed. So just pop up a window and let me know what happens. So what this does is it brings in that Creo assembly, and here we have it on our screen here. And one of the things that I'm going to touch upon is, first of all, let's kind of have the rotation set where I click. But you'll notice that the colors come in exactly that they were in the CAD system that they are from. So in this case, it's assembly files, so I can see that they even have transparency turned on some of these, which is fine. But maybe as a technical illustrator, or a person that wants to create a series of work steps or animations, I don't really need this to have transparency turned on. One of the things that it would hamper is if I wanted to do hidden line removal, right? So it is doing hidden line removal, but since it can see through one of the parts, we can see that not really along the lines of what we might want to have. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is just grab some of these parts. And this is kind of the nice thing about this tool, is that I can make changes here and it won't affect the engineering files at all, right? It only affects it here in my Creo Illustrate session. So I'm just going to say, let's edit the properties of these guys. And really under appearance, we can see that transparency is about, a little bit more than 70% right now. I'm going to say, let's make it solid. And in so doing, now we have some solid components. So if I do take a look at hidden lines, looks much better. So let's take a look at this. In addition, we can take a look at different ways that this displays geometry. And one of the things that we want to do is maybe display this in a variety of different ways. First of all, start working with a lot of what would be hard copy type images, right? So some exploded views and zoom ups and maybe some section views and things like that. So we can display this in a variety of ways, which makes it different than Creo View, because if you look at these menus, this is hauntingly similar to Creo View, right? The way that it works, a lot of the tools are exactly the same, but there's a lot of capabilities in here that goes way beyond the capabilities of what Creo View can do. So as we saw here, we can display it as it was shaded. We can see it maybe with hidden lines or darker edge lines displayed. We can kind of see it in a flat color, maybe with some shading. We saw the hidden line. We could do hidden lines with colors. We can do kind of a yellow light and then kind of a more of a pastel type. So these are different capabilities that we have just to display the geometry the way that we want. In this particular example, let's just kind of keep it the way that it is. You'll notice over on the left side here, we have the model tree, right? So this is the exact representation of the way that this assembly was created. And as we can see, this is the way the engineers put it together. This is how they break things out. So they have a carburetor assembly, they have a gearbox assembly, they have a variety of different things like that. For me, as an illustrator or as a manufacturing engineer that might want to put together a series of work steps, maybe this isn't the orientation or the organization that I want. This tool allows me to change this. This is really, really powerful. So let me show you how that might work. We go under Tools here, and what I'm going to say is, let's edit this structure. So here's our structure. I'm going to say, let's edit this. So what it does is it brings up another listing of the structure. And you notice here it says the EBOM, right? So this is what was delivered to us, in this case from Pro Engineer. So these are the assembly and the parts, and like I said, in the order that the engineers made them and put them together. The model tree that we were looking at actually says SBOM, a service bill of material, or it could be an MBOM, a manufacturer's bill of material. But what we can do now is rearrange things on this side and never affect the engineering bill of material, right? Because we're kind of making modifications to a copy of it. So we're never going to affect anything that engineering does, but we can repurpose the way that things are put together specifically for what we want to do. So for instance, let's say that we want to do some manufacturing steps. So one of the things I'm going to say is on our engineering BOM side, let's go and create a child part. And we'll call this, you notice that our drill here, we have some covers on the other side. So I'll just call them assemble covers. All right. So what that did is it made an empty part for me right down here. There's nothing in it yet, but now what I can do is pick the components that I want to have for this particular assembly step. So it's real simple. All I have to do is go in and start selecting some components. So I'm going to say, for putting on this particular cover, I'm going to need to include these 2 screws and the cover itself. You notice it's just grabbing those. Again, these are all under the recoil assembly, but we're not grabbing everything under that assembly, just the things that we need to assemble this cover on. On the other side over here, I'm going to go over and say, let's continue and grab maybe this bolt and this. So these are the things for the 2 covers that I need in order to do that. You can see we're mixing and matching a variety of different components from different sub-assemblies, and I just take those and drag those into my assemble covers. And you'll notice now they've been added there, and they've been removed from above. So we're restructuring our bill of material to make sense for what we need to do our steps for maybe assembly, disassembly, maybe for maintenance steps. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at this guy, maybe over here. I'm going to select on this component and say, let's turn him off for a second. And we can see we have a muffler here. And maybe another thing that I might want, in this case for maybe service, is I'm going to go in and say I want to, in addition, create another component, and we'll call this, we'll call it the Muffler Kit. So what we're going to do is put together a series of parts that would be a service kit for if we need to replace the muffler in this particular drill that we have. So again, I just go in and pick the components that I want, and then just drag them and drop them into my muffler kit, and now I have a muffler kit. Right. So it's very easy for me to customize this bill of material to the way that I need it without ever affecting the engineering bill of material. Again, I could remove parts if I wanted to out of here, delete them without affecting, again, anything that's done on the engineering side. Now that I've added a couple of my customizations to the bill of material, I just simply say, close this out. So again, we can see our components here. I'm going to turn on our 2 customized kits, and we can remove maybe this one window that we have over here. So now we have basically a good start for what we have. We've changed some colors, we've rearranged the BOM, and we're good to go. At this point, what we want to do is create a series of figures. And basically that's just the graphics that we want to create. You notice initially there's nothing there. And we could say, let's take this first image that we have and say, let's use that as our figure 1, right? So figure 1, we can see a little thumbnail down here. This is what it looks like. This is kind of a dynamic thing. So if I were to zoom up on this guy, and then I can come over here and say, let's use the current view. You notice that it zoomed up, our thumbnail zoomed up a little bit. So these are kind of dynamic. I can remove or move this around any way that I want, but what gets published out will be this little thumbnail that we see here. So kind of a good modeling practice is once you have something organized and oriented the way that you want, just come over here and say, use this as our current view, and it reorients it, and then that will be what gets published out. So one of the other techniques that I like to use personally is I'll use this as kind of like my start image, and everything will be kind of a copy of this. So it's kind of like a start part. I can say, call it in again and let's start over. But again, these guys would not be, they'd be in the transparent mode, and we'd have to go back and maybe start making some changes. So really what I'm going to do is just come over and say, let's just duplicate this guy for making our next version. And we can rename this to figure 2, or right now it's just called copy of figure 1. In this particular example, what I want to do is maybe look at this guy from this side, and we can start to take a look at some of the capabilities of this particular tool. First of all, let's say we're going to use this in a manual. So we're going to turn on hidden line. You notice that the thick, thin lines, there are thicker lines on the outside of edges and then thinner on the inner. Really good technique and capability that's heavily used in technical publications. But now that we have this, let's go in and say, let's make some modifications. I'm going to make it maybe an exploded view of pulling these things out. So I'm just going to grab a couple of these screws, and I'm just going to say, let's pull those out. And you notice we have the same drag handles that you see not only in Creo, but in Creo View. I can pull these guys out to here and then say, let's make some offset lines. So it automatically creates offset lines for us. And so now we're coming along with our exploded view. The next thing I'm going to do is grab some of these components and do the same kind of thing. I just want to pull them out a little bit. Pull this out to here. Maybe forget about him. And then finally we could just take maybe just take this guy and pull him out. We can restore things back. So it has the concept of understanding where things are from a standpoint of how they were assembled. And of course, we got undos and redos. And then finally, let's just grab this guy and maybe pull him out a little bit. All right, so here's our exploded view. And one of the things that I might want to do here is come in and let's say rotate him around a little bit. Zoom up like this. So one of the things that a lot of times we want to do is come in and maybe document this as far as ballooning it out. So I can come in and say, let's go in and create a balloon here and one maybe, actually let's not do him yet. Let's do this guy. So pick on him, then this guy, and then this guy. So I've automatically ballooned this out. The nice thing about the software in addition is that it also keeps track of these guys down here. We can see their names and their quantities. Now, I only picked one of these bolts, so it's only saying that there's a quantity of one. There's really 4, so I'm going to fix that in a second. But again, this information can be output. I'll show you that in a second when we go through this. But for this guy, I'm just going to pick on him and kind of delete him out. And what I really want to do is do all 4 of these. And I'm going to go under our item list here and say just make a single balloon for all 4 of these. But I can pick these guys. I'm just holding my control button down to, actually, let's just drag a box around them. And say, this time let's use it with quantity. So you notice that it says, okay, item number 2, there's 4 of those. I can also go in and take a look at how this is. Well, we don't really need to edit the properties of him though. Let's go over and take a look at this. I can select on it, and we can go in and say, just on this particular one, we could change the size. In this case, all I want to do is just make it look like the other ones. Let's just put a circle around it. We'll say okay. So now we have this. There's some other capabilities the software has in the realm of what we call it inserts, but basically I can pick on an area here and put our exploded view up there, maybe make it a little bit smaller. And maybe in fact, when I'm picking on this, well, we'll leave it hidden line for now. But here we can see kind of a zoomed up area on this. I might want to put a note over here. So I'll just come in and say, put a note, and we'll say right here, oil the gears, maybe make the text a little bit bigger. And we don't really need a circle around it or anything like that. So we can see this. Another thing is I might want to bring in some additional geometry. So what I can do is go on over here under symbols, and we look through here, and I can say here's like an oil can that I can use. I can maybe put that there, kind of drag him, kind of zoom out a little bit, pull this guy down. We want to manipulate him a little bit, pull him down. I'm just going to make him a little bit smaller and rotate him up and around, and kind of use this as a prop, right? This is what we need. So this will be the image that I want to use. Okay, for this, let's just move them over just a smidge. So again, practicing safe modeling, I'm going to come over here and say, use this as our current view. So we've created figure 1. Figure 2 looks like this. And one of the things that I can do, I mentioned before that I can output this and include this. You notice that our bolts now have a quantity of 4 because I selected all 4 of them. But what I can do is come over here and say I want to save this figure as an image. And there's a variety of different types of formats that we can send this to. I'm going to say save it to my desktop. We're going to save it as a PDF. And we'll say, okay, we'll just take the default name copy of figure 1. Right? And one of the things I can do is say, leverage a template. And basically a template is just going to organize the things on the page, maybe put a banner on it and stuff like that. So I'm going to say save this. Oh, one of the things I should do is let me export this guy out. We'll say PDF, desktop's all good. Overwrite the old one. I want to say this, launch our PDF viewer as we do this. So that will allow us to, here's my template that I read in. So I'll just pop it up and I won't have to call it up on my worksheet. So here's the image. So puts the little bomb down here, shows us the image that we've created, puts our title up here. Again, this is a template so we can have whatever we want up here or nothing at all. But again, really, really easy way of quickly putting out a PDF. Again, this is an intelligent bill of materials here. So as these things change, this will update accordingly. So will the images, obviously. So it's much better than just kind of copying and pasting. But anyway, so there's image 2. Let's go and try to create another image. So I'm going to create a couple of basic figures, and then we'll do some animations as well. So again, kind of following my process, we're going to make another version. In this particular example, let's maybe look at it this way. The nice thing about this software, it has a lot of cool capabilities. So I'm going to take this handle assembly, and I can just right mouse button on it and say isolate it. So this is really the only information that I'm interested in this particular figure that I'm going to create. What I'll do is I'll take this guy and we'll kind of move him over a little bit. And maybe move him down. And so now that I have him placed, one of the things I might want to do is come in and really the step that I want to do here is showing that this should be inserted into the trigger here. Again, making use of our little library here. And these are 3D parts, right? You know, that we see here. They aren't PRT files. If you save these out as product view files, it's really a .ol file, but those are the ones that get used in this library here. I'm just going to grab a simple arrow here. And again, this is a 3D arrow, so I can move it around like I did with that oil pan before. And we'll kind of move them around, shrink them down a little bit. And let's place them right maybe here. And then let's maybe make this look a little more like that. Again, real simple thing for me to go in, insert some text down here, and just say insert end of cable into trigger. Again, we'll make the text a little bit bigger, and we don't need to have a box around it. And then I can change the color and the font and, you know, all those kind of things. So here would be the second image that we want to create, our second figure. So I'm going to say that. So far, what I've done is I created our original, created this guy, created this guy. Let's go in and create one other one. I'm just going to go in and say, we won't work from scratch. We'll duplicate this guy. In this particular example, we can kind of look at this guy maybe from, we'll keep it looking in this particular orientation. I want to show maybe how we would remove some screws here and use those in our illustration. Maybe kind of explode these guys out, create some explode lines, maybe turn on hidden line removal. So here we can see the 3 screws here. Something that we might also want to do, if we take a look at our listing over here, we could see our handle assembly that we're working at. We also want to move him. We just don't want to leave him in place. So I'm going to kind of drag him this way and then maybe pull him up a little bit. So you'll notice that these guys didn't go with it, right? Because the offset lines just go directly to the holes that they were in. If I want to include these holes in there, there's a really neat little tool that I can use. I can just pick on one of these, and I say, let's insert an intermediate part. And we're going to say, let's use him. And I'm just going to pick the center here. And we say, OK. And now it jumps up to him. So it's very easy for me to go and kind of customize these offset lines. I can control them in a lot of different ways. That's like for another thing to talk about. But again, it's really simple. It uses kind of the same techniques. You just grab an edge of a circle, say make it go through the center. We do that. And we can do the same finally for this guy. I'll place him on there. down in that hole. All right, so now we've oriented this to be referencing through there. If I were to take this handle and say, I want to move him, again, as I move it up, you'll notice that they go with it. So this could be our other example of a image that we want to keep. So I'm going to say save him. So again, so far we've created, the original one that we've been using, copying off of, exploded this guy out, a couple different images here. Again, really, really quickly, right? It didn't take long at all to create this information. So second, let's talk a little bit about animations. So I'm going to come over here. And before I do that, I'm going to say, let's use our start guy for our animations. And I'm just going to pick animations. On this particular, I can make a continuous movie, right? Or I can create a sequence. So in this case, I'm going to say, let's create a sequence. You can see there's a little red dot over here. And that's just saying that it's going to start recording everything that I do. So I'm going to start making a movie of this. So the first step, as you can see, it's here called step 1. Again, I can rename it to whatever I want. But for step 1, I want to show removing this particular cover. Now the thing is that I'm going to show it being removed, but really I want this to be an assembly step because this is going out to one of the work cells where the covers need to be assembled as this comes down, down the assembly line. So one of the things that we're going to do is create a sequence for that. What I'm going to start off doing is I'm going to say, let's start it no matter what orientation it is. I'm going to say capture all. Let's look at it in this particular view here. So now I can start recording some things. So the first thing I'm going to do is maybe grab this bolt right here. And as we've been doing, I'm just going to drag him out into space. I'm going to actually add another effect out here. I'm going to say I want him to flash in a red color. And then I'm going to say, let's have him fade out. And so he's there. Let's take this guy. And for an effect for him, let's say we want him to unscrew. Right? So it went downward because it picked an automatic direction. I'm going to say use it in the Y direction. So now it unscrews up. We'll pull him up. Same thing. We'll say, let's take this guy. We'll flash him in a red color. And then maybe one last thing we'll say is he fades out. And then let's take this cover. I'm going to pull him out. And then, well, for an effect, I guess for him, we'll say we'll have him fade out. All right. So if we go back to the beginning, we can play our movie. That bolt comes out, flashes, fades out. He unscrews, fades out. And then here comes our cover, and it fades out. Now again, we're showing it being disassembled. I want it to be assembled. So for me as a user, I just pick down here. You notice everything that I've been doing, it's been adding it to the timeline. So right now our movie lasts about 8 seconds. Again, I can drag any of these portions out and make it last longer or shorter than it does. But I'm going to right click on this and say I want to reverse it. So now it's going to show it, instead of a disassembly step, an assembly step. You notice everything is disassembled right now. And as I played it, here comes this guy. He gets assembled in. Here comes the screw. And then finally, here comes the second screw, and he goes in. So now we'll go and say that's our first step. Let's go and say, let's add a step, right? Just hit the little plus sign. We've got another step. I'm going to put this around on this side, and we want to put together this cover over here that covers the carburetor. Again, I want it to always use this orientation. So I say, let's capture it from here. And then real simple, like we did before, just grab this guy. I won't I won't have them flash or anything because we've seen that. But, we'll say fade out. And let's grab this guy, cover. We pull him out. Same thing, fade out. So here's a real short movie for this particular. Again, if we play it, just one screw coming out with the cover. But again, if we want it to be an assembly step, I just say reverse. So now when we play this, and again, I can save these movies out as WMV movie files. They can also be used in, as I mentioned at the very beginning, augmented reality. And all we have to do is come and point our cell phone or a tablet at this particular drill, and this orientation will play this particular step for us. So it's really easy for me to go in, create these steps, make these types of changes. And again, going back to step number one, you notice how it flips it back around for us, and then we can play that movie here. So really, really easy to do, to go about creating these type of changes in these types of things. Let's go back to our figures that we have here. You notice that this final figure that I made, which would be essentially figure number 4, it puts like a little movie thing next to it. So it tells me that as figures go, this is an animated figure as opposed to the other guys that we had, which were just kind of in different ways of exploding out and displaying things that way. So these are some of the tools that we have available to us. Again, we saw the capabilities of being able to output these in a variety of different ways. But at this point, I'm going to switch it back to Cassie, and I'll also open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that presentation. I do have a question that's come through. Are there any statistics on how much Creo Illustrate has saved a customer? And I can go ahead and actually answer that. It really all depends on how the customer is creating their illustrations in their workflow. A customer with a very manual or tedious process can save up to 90% of their process time to create new illustrations, and up to 90% when applying updates from engineering. For customers that already have a pretty good process, we could save them up to 20 to 30% on creation and maybe 50% on updating. If you already have a great process, we may not save you a significant amount of time, but we'll also will at least be able to provide you much better quality. It all depends on how you're doing your illustrations today. With that, we encourage you to reach out to us, and we can schedule a personalized demo for you and your team, and we'll be able to learn a little bit more about your current process. All right, well, that is going to wrap it up then for today. Thanks so much for joining us on today's webinar on the must-have technical illustration capabilities to deliver 3D content. You'll receive a replay of the webinar shortly. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and watch out for future webinars, which you can find on eacpds.com/events. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.